There were those in the prophet's day who knew this, but it was not open. This was knowledge that he said was basically hidden. But he knew this was information that first and foremost came from us, meaning Asiatic people, Africans, Asians, and that information had been hidden and or corrupted. And he knew the situation was dire. We're in distress, right? That's why, the one aspect of why the Moorish flag, is upside down to imply being in distress, right? It's like, help, come in and help so we can get things straight. So this idea of having us get this information was to teach us how to be ourselves. So he came, as he said, to uplift fallen humanity. We fell from the knowledge of ourselves. That's why we were calling ourselves Negro, Black, and Colored. Interestingly enough, there are Gnostic scholars who talk about Jesus referring to sin by the term hobha or hobka. And sin is actually recognized as having, people say, separation from God or separation from the knowledge of the divine, right? Our separation is clear when we start calling ourselves by names that indicate we don't know who we are. Meaning we're disrespecting our ancestors by calling ourselves by a term that we would have never used. So you give me a label and I use your label to define myself. How is that showing any respect for our ancestors? Right? So the separation from the knowledge of God is seen as sinful. And the consequence, because it's an issue of cause and effect, is that we fell. Right? And if we believe, and of course from the perspective of Moorish science, to say that Allah and man are one, or that Allah exists within man, which may sound like it's blasphemous from certain perspectives coming from so-called Orthodox Islamic interpretation. But that's even qualified. You're not saying necessarily that you represent the all of Allah, because you can't, because Allah is vast. But you're talking about attributes or principles. The higher self is eternal, because that is of Allah. What you're seeking to do is manifest that in your everyday life. So you're reflecting that purity, that higher self, as opposed to the lower self. So Drew Ali understood that these were the tools that could help to get us out of the condition we were in. I mean, the condition of the average African-American or quote-unquote black person, a Negro, in a lot of urban centers and even throughout the rural areas was not very admirable. We had lost the knowledge of ourselves and were acting out on that, right? So giving people the tools to be able to correct their lives by telling them, first of all, you have a nationality, which means you have a history, which means you have a culture, one that's favorable, one that even non-Africans or Europeans recognize as commendable and worthy of imitation. That's one. Then two, you're told you want to have full access to the rights of a U.S. citizen, then you have to basically reaffirm or proclaim you have a national origin, that you're not under the law going to be defined by terms which implied you had no personhood, Negro, black, and colored. I go back to what John Hope Franklin said in Up From Slavery, quasi-free Negroes. I don't want to be quasi-free. I want to be free, a free citizen, right? And as I also mentioned with the case, the William Dungy case with Abraham Lincoln, where he needed to affirm that this man was of Moorish ancestry so that he would not be legally classified or seen as a Negro, because Negroes couldn't have any rights at that time in that state. And in fact, as I recall, they were trying to get him out because he wasn't supposed to be there. There was a period in Illinois history when free Negroes, they didn't want any free Negroes because they were seen as a threat to the quote unquote white power structure, right? So this is part of the need for the Moorish Science Temple clearly in the early 1920s. And I dare say we still need it now, right? Because we still have issues of a lack of self-love. We still have issues of a lack of understanding of the fact that we live in a democratic republic. This issue of having to come correct as far as your citizenship rights, and that's a controversial subject now, too, that you'll hear about. And I'll just say this. The need to remind people that there's a distinction between a citizen and a non-citizen. If non-citizens have the same rights as citizens, then what's the purpose of being a citizen? The only thing you're supposed to do is treat all people with respect. But it doesn't mean that respect means you have the same rights as a citizen, because I say again, otherwise, what's the point of being a citizen if you're going to maintain a democratic republic, right? So that was true in the 1920s, and it would be true right on up to the present. Yeah, I mean, there are many folks, whether they're in the Moorish Science Temple or not, just conscious Asiatics, conscious African peoples, who found that they have to be careful in talking to certain individuals because they know that it's going to result in what you just said. And it's like, do I want to engage at this point? How much energy, how much holy breath do I want to expend at this point? Because, I need to save something for myself, so to speak, so I can then go on and move into circles where people do want to hear what I have to say. And I'll just provide some knowledge or maybe ask a question and just ask them to reflect on that for a while.